My son took over my bank accounts and treated me like a child until I reminded him who he was dealing with. My son froze my bank accounts, gave me an allowance and said it was for my own good. Then he tried to move me into a nursing home without telling me. But what he didn't know was, I wasn't confused. I wasn't finished. And I was about to remind him exactly who he was dealing with. Before I begin, thank you for listening to my story. Let me know in the comments where and what time you're tuning in from. It means more than you know. It reminds me that I'm not alone in this. And if you'd like to share your story with me, feel free to email it. I'll drop my email in the description below. Now let me tell you what really happened. I was never one to need help managing my affairs. I paid off my mortgage before Malcolm even graduated college. I kept a little notebook where I tracked every dollar that came in and every dollar that went out. My balance was always precise down to the cent. I didn't grow up with much, so I learned early how to stretch what little I had. That's why it stunned me when my own son, the same boy I once wrapped in a towel after his first swimming lesson, started treating me like I was the child. It all started the summer I turned 74. I had just come in from watering my tomato plants. The heat was heavy that morning, sticky and mean. I felt a little dizzy near the kitchen counter, but I chalked it up to not eating breakfast. Next thing I knew, I was waking up on the floor with my neighbor Mrs. Hargrove fanning me with a church bulletin. She'd seen me collapse through the window. An ambulance came. The hospital kept me overnight for observation. Just dehydration, they said. Nothing more. Malcolm came the next morning with a bouquet of fake flowers and a stack of concern I hadn't seen since his wedding. "Mom, we have to talk about your safety," he said. "What if you'd been alone longer? What if Mrs. Hargrove hadn't seen you?" He asked questions like he wanted permission to feel superior. I just listened. A few days after I came home, Malcolm brought over a banker. His name was Greg, young and oily, with 2 white teeth and a folder already prepared. "It's just temporary," Malcolm said, guiding me to the kitchen table. "Power of attorney. In case anything ever happens again. I'll just be authorized to help with your accounts." I didn't like the sound of it. But Malcolm was my son. My only child. He rubbed my back while I signed. Said he'd handle things until I was feeling stronger. Trisha brought over soup and smiled a little too wide. "We're just looking out for you, Mama V." At first I didn't notice anything had changed. I still got mail. Still had my purse and my PIN. Then one morning I went to the grocery store to buy flour and yeast. My neighbor had asked for homemade rolls, and my debit card declined. Confused, I tried again. Declined. I used my emergency credit card. It went through, but I stood there shaking. I called Malcolm. He said not to worry. "I moved some things around, Mom," he said. "Just streamlining everything. You don't really need to handle that anymore." That was the first time he said those words. You don't need to handle that anymore. He started showing up with printouts of monthly summaries he'd made for me. It was like he was managing a client, not caring for his mother. When I asked about a missing bank statement, he told me they were going paperless now. "It's more modern," he said. "Besides, it's not like you read all those pages." I let that one go. But it didn't stop there. Malcolm took my debit card, "just so you don't misplace it again." He set up a joint checking account for emergencies, but never gave me access. When I called my insurance provider to ask a question about my premiums, they said the point of contact had been changed to him. That's when I started writing things down. Dates, names, amounts. I kept the notebook tucked inside a cookbook no one ever touched. Trisha started making jokes when she came by. "You still balancing that little checkbook? How vintage." They laughed, but I wasn't amused. One day I mentioned wanting to buy a new winter coat. Malcolm told me it wasn't in the budget right now. My own money not in the budget. That's when I realized they had done more than move things around. They'd taken over. They were managing me like I was one of his clients. Or worse, like I was too feeble to think straight. "You don't remember how cold it was last year?" I asked him. He smiled like I'd proved his point. "Exactly. That's why we're helping." They started making decisions about my house too. "This place is too big," Trisha said, walking through my living room like she was evaluating it. "Wouldn't it be better to move into something cozier? We could help sell this and get everything settled." That word again. Help. Then came the allowance. Malcolm called it monthly discretionary support. $150 loaded onto a prepaid card like I was a teenager. That was the last straw. I called Reggie. Reggie is my nephew on my sister's side. Grew up spending summers in my house. He works in IT now, lives out in Raleigh. We kept in touch, birthday calls and Christmas cards, but we hadn't spoken at length in years. When I called, he picked up on the third ring. "Reggie," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I need your help." Quietly. He didn't ask what for. Didn't ask why. Just said, "I'll be there Thursday." That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the budget sheet Malcolm had left behind. My name was on top in bold. But the numbers, they didn't belong to me anymore. I looked around my own home and felt like a guest. A tolerated guest. I hadn't lost my memory. I hadn't lost my mind. But I was losing my freedom. And Malcolm was about to find out exactly who he was dealing with. Reggie arrived that Thursday just after noon, wearing his usual pressed jeans and a Carolina Panthers hoodie. He hugged me tight and didn't say a word until we were both seated at the dining table. I handed him my little notebook. He flipped through it slowly, his eyes narrowing as he read the entries. "You've been tracking all of this?" he asked. I nodded. "I never stopped," I said. "They just hoped I would." He pulled out a silver laptop from his backpack and got to work. While I brewed tea, he typed furiously, logging into sites I hadn't touched in months. My old passwords didn't work. Malcolm had changed everything. Reggie ran a trace on my social security number. That's when we found it. Foreclosed accounts. 2 others rerouted under something called Thompson Legacy Holdings. My name wasn't even listed as a secondary owner. It was all under Malcolm. "He created a shell company," Reggie said, turning the screen toward me. "And he's been using your money to fund it." My throat went dry. I leaned in, staring at the numbers. $88,000 gone. I sat back in the chair, hands folded in my lap. My palms were cold. I asked him the only thing that mattered. "Can we get it back?" Reggie looked me dead in the eye. "If we have records and I know a good lawyer, yes. But you'll have to be careful. You can't tip him off yet." I nodded. "I've been careful my whole life," I said. "What do we do next?" He helped me download a small app on a spare phone and taught me how to screen record. Anytime he says something that sounds shady, record it. Don't confront him. Just keep gathering. I followed his instructions. Over the next few weeks, I pretended like nothing had changed. I complimented Trisha's cooking. I asked Malcolm how his business was doing. I even thanked him for taking care of everything. But every time he slipped and said something like, "my portfolio," or "the equity in the house," I tapped that little red button on my burner phone and saved it all. One day he sat across from me in my living room and said, "You know, Mom, it's honestly better this way. You don't have to worry about a thing. You get to enjoy life. No stress." I smiled. "You're right, baby," I said sweetly. "I'm just so lucky to have a son like you." He grinned and patted my hand like I was a confused old lady. He had no idea he was digging his own grave. By the end of that week, Reggie returned with a folder thicker than a church hymnal. "This is everything," he said. "Account movements, email traces, IP logs, phone call transcripts." I looked at it all and felt that familiar click in my brain, the one I used to feel when I caught a student cheating on an exam. It was the sound of clarity. I opened a drawer in my hallway, pulled out a dusty red folder and handed it to Reggie. "What's this?" he asked. "My original will," I said. "And the contact for my attorney. Her name is Cassandra Wynne. I haven't needed her in years, but I'm thinking it's time." I called Cassandra the next morning. She picked up on the second ring. "Viola Thompson," she said, her voice smooth and sharp. "I was wondering when you'd call me again. What's going on?" "Someone's stealing from me," I said. "And it's my own son." She didn't gasp. She didn't hesitate. "How soon can you get to my office?" I was there by noon. Cassandra looked exactly the same. Tight natural curls, gold-rimmed glasses, red lipstick like she meant business. I gave her everything. Reggie's folder, my old documents, the recordings. She read through it all without saying a word, flipping each page slowly. Then she set it down and looked up at me. "We're not going to confront them," she said. "We're going to let them trap themselves." She explained her plan. First, she'd file for an emergency financial review and start drafting a legal injunction. Meanwhile, I would act like nothing was wrong. The goal was to give Malcolm enough rope to tie the knot himself. Cassandra also updated my will. Everything I had, home, savings, insurance, would be moved into a trust in my name only, with clear provisions in case of mental incapacitation. She also appointed Reggie as the secondary executor. You still have full control, she said, but we've added layers so this never happens again. I nodded, overwhelmed but steady. And if they try to move me? I asked. Cassandra leaned in. Call me. I'll have that injunction filed within an hour. If they try to relocate you, declare you unfit, or sell property without your consent, we'll bury them. I walked out of her office with a new will in my purse and fire in my chest. For the first time in months, I felt like myself again. At home, Trisha was sitting on my porch steps, scrolling on her phone. Hey Mama V, she said, not even looking up. Malcolm's talking about listing the house soon. The market's hot. I smiled. Oh, is it now? I said. Well, we'll just have to see what the future holds. She didn't notice the edge in my voice. He never did. Inside, I folded the new will and placed it in a fresh envelope. Then I locked it in the same drawer where I kept my birth certificate. This time, I wasn't going to wait for anyone to protect me. This time, I was going to protect myself. Malcolm had no idea that his little game of control was coming to an end. And this time it would be on my terms. By the time Christmas decorations started showing up in the grocery store, I had enough evidence to fill a drawer. Malcolm thought he was smart. He used big words, talked fast, and pretended I didn't understand half of what he said. But I'd been watching people like him my whole life. I taught math for 37 years. You don't scare easy after raising a classroom full of teenagers and grading tests with red ink until your fingers cramp. Reggie came by again in mid-November, this time with a printer and a portable scanner. You need hard copies of everything, he said. Digital stuff can disappear if they try anything slick. We spent the whole afternoon printing every screenshot, bank transaction, and email trail that had his name on it. One email thread in particular made my stomach twist. Malcolm had been corresponding with a private real estate consultant. He was listing my house. Not hypothetically, actively. There were digital renderings of what the place could look like once the elderly occupant is moved out. That was me. The elderly occupant. And that wasn't even the worst part. In another document, I found an appraisal form signed electronically, with my name on it. It had been submitted 2 weeks ago. I had never seen it. He forged your signature, Reggie said, staring at the screen. That's a crime, Auntie V. I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. I just walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the sink until I could feel my pulse slow down. Malcolm came by the next day. He always came on Saturdays like clockwork, as if I were an elderly patient on his rotation. He walked in without knocking, holding a box of organic groceries I didn't ask for. Trisha was behind him, already talking about her new side business selling custom pillows on Etsy. He sat down on the couch, smiled like he was doing me a favor, and said, "So Mom, we need to have a real talk about your future. You've done so much for this family and we think it's time you really relax. No more worrying about bills, upkeep, any of that." I blinked slowly. "Go on," I said. "There's this beautiful senior community just outside the city. Silver Pines. It's got everything. Gardens, activity rooms, nurses on site. They even do bingo on Wednesdays." He chuckled like it was a treat. "We already toured it. You'd love it." Trisha added, "And the best part? We can finally get that antique furniture appraised. Some of it might be valuable, you know. Just sitting here collecting dust." I looked at the both of them. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't tremble. I had everything I needed now. So I said the only thing that wouldn't give me away. "That sounds lovely, baby. When were you thinking?" "Early January," Malcolm said. "We're just waiting for a couple of offers to come in. But don't worry, we'll handle the move." I smiled. Of course. That night, I called Cassandra from the old flip phone she gave me. "They're moving forward," I said. "They're planning to relocate me and sell the house." Her voice was crisp as ever. "Then it's time. I'll file the injunction tomorrow. Let them play into it. We'll make this public if we need to." The next morning, I opened my mailbox and found a Christmas card from Malcolm and Trisha. It was a photo of them on a yacht. Malcolm was wearing sunglasses. Trisha had on a sun hat and held a glass of something bubbly. Inside the card, in neat print, it read, "Happy holidays from the future Mr. and Mrs. Thompson estate." No mention of me. I took the card, tore it in half, and dropped it in the trash. Then I poured myself coffee, opened the curtain and stared out at my front lawn. It was still mine. Every blade of grass, every crack in the driveway, every rusted piece of the old porch swing. Malcolm didn't come by the next weekend. He sent a text saying he was too busy with year-end financials. Trisha posted a picture of their living room with the caption, "Manifesting a new space soon. Goodbye old energy." They were sure they'd already won. I spent the next week preparing with Cassandra. She helped me freeze any further account transfers. She filed the fraud complaint, the forged signature report, and the injunction to block the house sale. Reggie even set up hidden cameras in the hallway just in case they tried to move me without consent. Every angle was covered. Then Cassandra looked at me and said, "Thanksgiving is coming up. Invite them. Say nothing. Let them bring their smug smiles and their grand plans. We'll handle the rest." I smiled. "You sure?" She leaned forward. "Mrs. Thompson, I've never been more sure of anything in my life." And just like that, it became a countdown. I cleaned the house. I baked cornbread and sweet potato pie. I set the table with the good china I hadn't used since my husband's funeral. I even pulled out Malcolm's old place card from his high school graduation and set it next to the wine glass. Trisha called the night before. "We'll bring dessert. Hope you don't mind, I invited a few friends. They've been dying to see the house before we make changes." "Oh, not at all," I said. "The more the merrier." Then I hung up the phone, sat down in my favorite chair and let myself feel it. The peace. The power. Malcolm thought he had the upper hand. But tomorrow he'd find out exactly who raised him. And what happens when a mother stops playing nice. Thanksgiving morning came quiet and gray. A little drizzle tapped at the kitchen window while I stirred the gravy. The turkey was in the oven, the pies were cooling on the rack, and my house smelled like cinnamon and home. I put on my cream-colored cardigan, the one Malcolm once said made me look a little too old-fashioned, and I wore it anyway. I sat down at the table and waited. They arrived at 1:15 late as usual. Malcolm barged in holding a store-bought cheesecake and shouting about traffic. Trisha trailed behind, wearing a faux fur vest and perfume too strong for a dinner table. They brought friends this time. 2 couples. Strangers. The kind of people who speak in polite tones but scan your home like it's a listing. Malcolm's voice carried across the living room. "This place has great bones," he said. "We could knock out this wall, open up the kitchen. Add value." He didn't even look at me when he said it. Trisha smiled and nodded, running her hand across my mantle like she was already redecorating. I smiled. "Make yourselves comfortable. Dinner's almost ready." I set the food out one dish at a time. Turkey, stuffing, cranberry greens. Cornbread last. When everyone sat down, Malcolm tapped his glass with a fork. "Before we eat, I want to say a few words." I watched him stand, holding his wine like he was making a boardroom announcement. "This year's been full of growth and hard decisions. Trisha and I have taken on new responsibilities, especially where family is concerned. As many of you know, we'll be moving Mom into Silver Pines in January." Trisha cut in with a laugh. "Don't worry, it's gorgeous. She'll be pampered. She deserves it." One of their guests leaned forward. "And the house." Malcolm smiled. "We're already entertaining offers. This place has been in the family for decades, but it's time for a new chapter." I stood then. Not fast. Not loud. Just slow and steady. "Thank you, Malcolm," I said. "But I have an announcement too." He looked confused for half a second, like a magician being upstaged at his own show. "I won't be moving to Silver Pines," I said. "In fact, I've already made arrangements elsewhere." Trisha blinked. "What?" "And this house," I continued. "It's already sold." Malcolm set down his wine. "Excuse me." I nodded. "I sold it last week. Closing papers are signed. Funds are secured in my private trust, which, by the way, you no longer have access to." The room fell quiet. Forks stopped clinking. Even the strangers looked uncomfortable. And then the front door opened. In walked Cassandra Wynne, heels clicking against the hardwood, holding a leather folder under her arm. "Mrs. Thompson," she said warmly. "Everything is finalized. The injunction has been filed. The fraud report is active. And your updated will has been notarized." Trisha shot to her feet. "Who is this?" Cassandra smiled. "I'm her attorney. And you're going to want to sit down." Malcolm's face went red. "You can't do this. You signed over power of attorney. No, I said. You tricked me into signing a temporary document during a medical episode. And then you exploited it. That's not help. That's theft. Cassandra laid down copies of the fraud complaint, the forged appraisal form, and the court motion to restore full control of my financial assets. You used her identity to open an LLC, Cassandra said. You drained over $80,000 from her accounts. You forged her signature to begin selling a home that didn't belong to you. That's multiple felonies. Tricia sat down slowly, looking paler than I'd ever seen her. You always said I wasn't sharp anymore, I told Malcolm. But it turns out I was just quiet. And I let you show me exactly who you are. You don't understand, he stammered. I was just trying to help. No, I said. You were trying to control. And now you've lost everything. Cassandra leaned over and slid one final paper across the table. You've also been removed from her estate. Permanently. His mouth fell open. And just so we're clear, I added, Reggie is the sole executor now. He'll make sure you never get near another dime of mine. For a full minute no one spoke. Then Tricia stood up and grabbed her purse. Come on, Malcolm. Let's go. But he didn't follow. He just stood there staring at me, his mouth open, his world crumbling. Cassandra walked them to the door. If either of you attempt to contact her again, we'll pursue harassment charges. Good night. The door closed behind them. And then I laughed. It wasn't a loud laugh. It was the kind that comes up from your chest after you've held it in too long. I looked around the table at the half-finished plates, the silent guests, the untouched wine. Then I picked up my fork and took a bite of sweet potato pie. It was delicious. Cassandra sat beside me and poured herself a glass. That was beautiful, she said. Poetic. I shrugged. He should have known better. After everyone left, I packed the leftovers and cleaned the kitchen with slow satisfaction. I tossed the fake cheesecake in the trash and scrubbed the counters down to the tile. When I finished, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the rain finally stop. The air smelled fresh. And I'd never felt freer. The court date came fast. Cassandra filed everything the Monday after Thanksgiving, and by Friday I was sitting in front of a judge with a cardigan on my shoulders and 3 folders in my lap. Malcolm showed up late, looking like he hadn't slept. His suit didn't fit right and his eyes were sunken. Tricia wasn't with him. I heard through Cassandra that she'd gone back to Atlanta to get space from the mess he'd made. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. The judge was a no-nonsense black woman with short curls and sharp glasses. She read through the documents in silence, lips pursed. Cassandra spoke with the kind of calm that rattles people like Malcolm. She laid out the entire timeline, how I'd been misled into signing temporary authority, how Malcolm had rerouted my funds into a fraudulent LLC, how he'd forged my signature on the appraisal forms, and how he planned to move me into a senior home so he could liquidate my house without my knowledge or consent. Malcolm tried to interrupt. Your Honor, she's confused. My mother's memory isn't what it used to be. The judge didn't even look up. I've reviewed the audio recordings. She doesn't sound confused. You do. He sat down. Cassandra submitted the bank records and Reggie's digital documentation. She presented evidence of financial misconduct, power of attorney abuse, and elder exploitation. The judge nodded slowly as she listened. I see this more often than I care to admit, she said. But this is one of the most calculated I've ever seen. Malcolm looked at me, eyes pleading now. Mom, please. This isn't what it looks like. I leaned forward. It looks like you stole from me. Looks like you wanted me out of the way. And it looks like I finally did something about it. He had no response. The judge restored full legal and financial control to me effective immediately. Malcolm's power of attorney was revoked retroactively. He was ordered to pay restitution for every cent taken, $88,000, plus interest and attorney fees. The LLC he created under my name was dissolved on the spot. Any attempts to access my accounts, contact my service providers, or list my home in the future would result in criminal charges. After the ruling, I didn't look back. I walked out of that courtroom with my shoulders high and my lawyer beside me. I could feel the air shift outside the courthouse. It wasn't just legal victory. It was something deeper. I got my name back. My life back. My dignity. Cassandra dropped me off at the bank herself. We walked in together. The manager greeted me like I was a ghost. Mrs. Thompson, he said, eyes wide. We didn't know you were back in control. I smiled. You do now. We corrected every document, changed every contact, reset every password. I closed the joint account Malcolm had created and reopened a private one in my name only. I even updated my emergency contacts. Reggie was listed first, Cassandra second. Malcolm was nowhere on the paper. By December, the house was legally protected under the new trust. My monthly income was secure again. I had a prepaid legal service on standby and a new accountant Reggie personally vetted. Everything Malcolm touched was undone. As for him, he lost his job 2 weeks after the ruling. Word got out through the financial circles that he'd been accused of elder abuse and identity fraud. The firm didn't want that kind of stain. Trisha filed for separation soon after. She'd only married him for the illusion of stability, and once that crumbled, she was gone. Last I heard, Malcolm was renting a small duplex on the edge of town. The same neighborhood he used to call sketchy. The luxury SUV was repossessed. He tried applying for financial licenses again, but the pending fraud report made it impossible. He picked up part-time work at a credit repair agency. Not running it, answering phones. The irony? He now works for people trying to recover from financial abuse. Me. I bought a 2-bedroom condo near Reggie. No stairs, no noisy neighbors, and a little garden out back where I grow tomatoes again. My new place is small, quiet, and entirely mine. Every morning I wake up, brew my own coffee, and check my own accounts. No one tells me what's in my budget. No one hides my passwords. No one calls me forgetful when I ask questions. Reggie visits every Sunday. Sometimes we talk about the court case. Sometimes we talk about the new books I'm reading. Sometimes we say nothing and just watch the birds from the back porch. One afternoon he asked me, "Auntie V, do you miss them?" Him. I thought about it. About the boy I raised. The one who used to bring me dandelions and call me Mama Bear. The one who called every Friday when he was away at college. The one who used to hug me with both arms. I miss who he used to be, I said. But I don't miss who he became. Reggie nodded. He understood. That night I sat by my window and looked out at the stars. For the first time in a long time I didn't feel watched, managed, or doubted. I felt free. Malcolm, he finally got what he wanted. He got to be in charge. Of nothing. The first Christmas after everything went down was quiet. No big dinner. No fake smiles. No gifts from Trisha wrapped like department store displays with price tags still hidden underneath. I spent it with Reggie and his wife Monique. Their little girl Layla called me Auntie V, and showed me every single ornament on the tree like she'd just discovered treasure. It wasn't fancy, but it was peaceful, and it was real. A few days later I received a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Malcolm's handwriting. Sloppy. Rushed. He didn't apologize. He didn't even mention the court case. He just wrote that he'd been struggling, that Trisha had left, that he'd lost everything. And at the bottom, a single sentence that struck me harder than I expected. I thought I was protecting you. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer next to my old checkbooks. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat for a while thinking about the kind of protection that takes everything from someone and calls it love. In January I finally let the dust settle. I sold the last remaining asset in my name that had Malcolm's fingerprints on it. A storage unit he'd been using to stash old boxes, business files, and some furniture from my house he'd moved out without permission. The money went straight into a scholarship fund I started at the local community college. 4 first-generation students from single-parent households. I named it after my late husband, Harold. The next time Malcolm tried to access anything in my name, an old email login, a credit report inquiry, it triggered an alert I'd set up through Reggie's IT security firm. Cassandra called me personally. "Just a ping," she said. "No action needed. But I thought you'd want to know." "I do," I replied. "And thank you." By February I'd developed a routine. Mornings were mine. Coffee. Music. Reading the paper. I even started writing in a little journal Reggie bought me for Christmas. Not to record what had happened, no, that was behind me, but to remember who I was. Who I had always been. I wrote about the day I bought my first car. The time I saved 3 students from being expelled because I believed in them when no one else would. I wrote about Malcolm's birth and how I rocked him through fevers. I wrote about the time he won a spelling bee in 4th grade and looked at me like I hung the moon. That version of him, the little boy who needed me, loved me, respected me, he lived in my memories. But the man he became? I had buried that with the last lie he told. In March I got a knock on my door. It was Malcolm. He looked thinner, ashen, eyes sunken and hands fidgeting at his sides. He didn't bring flowers. He didn't bring a gift. Just himself. Standing on my porch like a boy who didn't know how to be a man anymore. "Mom," he said, voice low. "Can we talk?" I stood there in silence for a moment. Then I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "We're not doing this in my home," I said. He nodded. "Okay." We sat on the porch. He looked around at the plants, the little wind chime Reggie's daughter had made me, the rocking chair I'd found at a flea market and restored with my own hands. "I lost everything," he said. "After the court ruling. After Trisha left. I've been working part-time answering phones. Sleeping on a friend's couch. I deserved it. I know I did." I said nothing. "I was scared," he continued. "Of losing you. Of not being in control. And I thought, if I managed everything, maybe I could finally make up for all the years I wasn't there. But I got greedy. I know that now." I stared at the street lamp across the road. It flickered softly. "I'm not asking for money," he added. "Or forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to be better." I turned to look at him. His hands were shaking. "You betrayed me," I said. "You turned me into a problem to manage. A spreadsheet. A burden. I know. You called it love, but it was control. You stole from me and called it protection." He blinked fast. His jaw trembled. "And still," I said, my voice soft now, "you are my son." He looked up, eyes red. "But you are no longer my legacy." He bowed his head. I stood, opened the screen door and stepped inside. As I was closing it, I heard his voice, barely above a whisper. "I miss you, Mom." I paused. "I hope someday," I said, "you'll grow into the man I raised. Not the one you became." Then I shut the door. And that was the last time we spoke. Now when I walk through my condo, every room speaks peace. There's no tension hiding behind the furniture. No password stolen. No mail redirected. Just me, my name, and my freedom. Reggie stops by every weekend with Layla. They bring muffins. We drink coffee on the porch and laugh. He updates me on the scholarship fund, tells me how many students we've helped so far. 5 this semester. 2 of them young women who remind me of myself when I was working double shifts to put Malcolm through college. Life isn't perfect, but it's mine again. And when people ask me how I bounced back after what my son did, I tell them the truth. I didn't bounce. I stood up. And I never let anyone sit me down again.